consolidation have boosted the near-term outlook for the most oil exporters in the region. Higher oil prices have also led to a notable improvement in their fiscal and external balances. Among these countries, growth is projected at 1.4% in 2018 and 2% in 2019. The regional average is held back by the deterioration in the outlook for Iran, given the reimposition of the US sanctions. Meanwhile, oil importers are projected to grow at 4.5% in 2018 and 4% next year. But these averages mask a great variation across countries, with most MENAP oil importing countries expected to grow at below 3% annually. Despite the ongoing effort, fiscal and external pressure remain significant, including as a consequence of the higher oil prices. Let me turn to the outlook for the Caucasus and Central Asia. Following a better-than-expected economic performance in 2017, the growth momentum is expected to fade relatively, with growth projected at 4% in 2018 and in 2019. As in the MENAP region, oil exporting countries are benefiting from high oil prices, while remittances continue to support growth in oil importing countries. Over the medium term, we expect growth to stabilize at 4.2%. If these projections are realized, it will take the region nearly 2 decades to reach a per capita income level currently enjoyed in emerging Europe. Let me say a few words about the uncertainties and risks surrounding our outlook. The global environment is undoubtedly less favorable than when we convened in Washington 6 months ago. Trade tensions and geopolitical strains cloud the outlook. While countries in the region may not be directly impacted by the US tariffs, the indirect effect of escalating trade tension could be significant, including if lower global growth reduces commodity prices, or if lower growth in key economic partners, such as China and the Euro area, weighs on export demand and foreign direct investment. And for countries in the region with high level of debt burden or large financing needs, they remain vulnerable to the sudden shift in investors' sentiment. Some are already feeling the pinch of tighter financial conditions. Oil prices also remain a source of uncertainty. Further increase could weaken the resolve of oil exporting countries to continue reforms, while exacerbating pressures on oil importing countries. Finally, political uncertainty and social tension continue to challenge the reform agenda in some countries in the region. Bottom line, the weather is changing, so urgent actions is needed to strengthen countries' resilience. For many MENAP and CCA countries, this means continued fiscal adjustment to rebuild buffers is a must. Countries with flexible exchange rate regimes should allow themselves and allow the exchange rate to move to absorb external pressure as they rise. All countries need to intensify reform that help diversify economies, promote dynamic private sector, and foster inclusive growth. Before taking your questions, I would like to emphasize that the fund continues to support both MENAP and CCA countries in their pursuit of their reform agenda. This includes providing not just policy advice and technical assistance, but also financial support. Currently, we have 6 financial programs with countries in MENAP, Afghanistan, Egypt, Iraq, Jordan, Tunisia, and Mauritania, and 2 financial programs in the CCA region, Georgia and Kyrgyz Republic. We also have staff-monitored program with Somalia, who is our major recipient of technical assistance. Once again, I would like to thank you for your participation today at the press conference. And now I'm happy to take any of your questions.
Thank you, Jihad. Please go ahead and identify yourself and the organization you work for. أهلا، أنا جيم سويدي من الفاينانشال تايمز. فيما يتعلق مؤتمر الاستثمار في الرياض المسمى عقده في الرياض في الشهر القادم، وفيما يتعلق باختفاء الصحفي السعودي ورد فعل صندوق النقد الدولي لما حدث من طرف الحكومة السعودية، إذا كان من الممكن التعليق. شكرا لهذا السؤال. لقد عقد الصندوق العزم على اللقاء في منطقة الخليج العربي منذ فترة، وسوف يعقد في مدينة الكويت العاصمة، وأيضا مع إطلاق آفاق الاقتصاد العالمي في هذه المنطقة. وبالطبع مثلما نحن والآخرون في أماكن مختلفة من العالم، نحن في انتظار الوصول إلى آخر الأنباء فيما يتعلق بهذا الموضوع، ونحن كالآخرون ننتظر رد الفعل الرسمي. لدينا سؤال آخر من شيرين عبد العزيز from the Middle East. This question is going to be in Arabic.
دعم المواد النفطية، وهذا سيشكل عبئا جديدا على الشارع المصري.
Yeah. Do you think that the Egyptian government adopting protectionist measures is going to do a great deal to the local economy in Egypt? Well, I must say that the Egyptian government tried about a year and a half ago, started a serious program to put the Egyptian economy on track. There was indeed some regression in the standard of living in the country, but since then, the investment situation in Egypt has got better over the past 18 months. Egypt has, over that period, a growth rate that exceeded the expected rate, and it reached 5%, and also a lowering of the unemployment rate. This also meant indirectly that other programs have been put into place to ameliorate the social situation, social care situation in Egypt. Now, obviously, the reforms had led to some damage that was put on the shoulders of the poorer sectors of the society, but the program has undertook some measures to alleviate the burden of the reform program, and that we expect that will pay off in the end. The Egyptian government over the past 18 months has actually taken some steps to assist the vulnerable sectors in the country, such as youth and the retirees, and also those working in the public sector, to improve their lot noticeably. There is no doubt that the macroeconomic reforms must also include some reforms to increase the growth rate and to include all sectors in the Egyptian society through some reforms that would invite the private sector to play a more active part in the overall macroeconomic reform in the country, protecting those who are most vulnerable, such as the limited income citizens with limited income. If I may actually follow the situation in Egypt, the Egyptian Finance Ministry has actually cancelled some investments because of the higher interest rates. Do you think that Egypt needs another loan from the IMF to assist the general finance? There is no doubt that over the past few years, that emerging markets, including Egypt, have suffered as the interest rates have shot up. That has a negative effect on emerging markets. However, taking Egypt into consideration, the macroeconomic reforms, have actually adopted some steps that we have seen some positive results, where the reforms have actually been able to absorb the shocks caused by the reforms, and particularly the foreign exchange. Now, there is no denial that the interest rates and the interest rates in Egypt is a bit too high. However, we believe that the reforms that the Egyptian government has undertook to put into place has actually done some good results, and we have seen some positive changes that allowed Egypt to cope with the transformations in the international markets. There is no denial that maintaining such stable situation in the Egyptian economy must follow up with other parts of the Egyptian economy, and Egypt has actually undertook to perform according to the IMF plan. Yes, another question from Egypt.
Of course, the increase in oil prices has created a challenge for all important countries, and Egypt is one of them. In the program, Egypt has already initiated a reform of the subsidy system that is gradual and expected by end of 2019, in fact, to have an automatic adjuster for oil prices. The pace and the magnitude of that, this is something that is left to the government to decide on. But the already taken steps in this direction helped the Egyptian authorities to release additional fiscal resources, that part of those resources were used to reduce the level of deficit, and another part helped to increase the social programs that Egypt has developed over the last few years.
Thank you. We have another question from Shireen Abdelaziz from MENA News Agency. Also,
question from Shireen Abdelaziz from MENA News Agency. Hawla Misra, on Egypt. Yes. The question is, what are the steps taken by Egypt to ensure that the macroeconomic reforms will actually lead to more jobs? Well, the program adopted by Egypt over the past 18 months have witnessed an improvement, a noticeable improvement in the employment market, reaching 11.5% unemployment rate. It now has been 9%. Egypt needs about 900,000 jobs annually, and the macroeconomic reforms, and which is actually the most important factor in creating jobs in Egypt, apart from direct investment, such is so important that it actually leads to improvement in other areas such as tourism and export sectors, and also the employment sector. But we must remember that macroeconomic reforms is the backbone of any economic system that needs to perform well on a number of several sectors. We must also consider the available finance for private sector projects, because that will actually increase the jobs in Egypt. Recently, the IMF has done a study to look at the availability of investment funds, and the study concluded that such is so important and significant that it would actually help increasing better jobs in emerging markets. And no doubt, one of the better results that we are looking for in the region, and particularly in Egypt, we believe that it will actually contribute to the creation of the 500,000 jobs that are required annually. We believe that such macroeconomic reforms, no matter how tough and hard, they are the most important step that Egypt should have had done, and Egypt has done that, and we see positive results on the way.
The Economic and Business magazine from Beirut. I should like to put direct questions related to Beirut. The exchange rate for the Lebanese lira, the funding of housing, the CEDAR conference, that from the perspective of the economic impact of the newly settled government in Lebanon. As you know, that the IMF took part in the CEDAR's conference, and we did submit a presentation there. The IMF considers that such a conference, in addition to the reforms put in place by the government related to the decrease of the current the deficit, to reform the utilities such as electricity, all these measures are likely to improve the economic prospects, the job creation, and boost the macroeconomic growth. This is the opinion of the IMF and the gist of the presentation of the IMF during the CEDAR's conference. I should like to add something. Lebanon, like Jordan, has borne a heavy burden in receiving refugees. And the role of these countries was very significant in playing host to refugees. This was a huge burden on their economies, and indeed the IMF did encourage countries and institutions to lend their support to Lebanon and Jordan to alleviate the burden they had to carry because of the presence of the refugees on their territories. As for Lebanon, we do encourage Lebanon to undertake reforms. We encourage them to set in the CEDAR's workshop and to promote development and to alleviate any negative impact of these processes. As for the housing issue, this is a matter that falls within the remit of the domestic policies, and therefore the IMF doesn't have a specific opinion about this. However, in the broader scheme of things, as I said, the IMF is boosting the financing inclusion concept. And in Beirut in mid-July, we did take part in the Economic and Business Conference. We stressed the need to promote the financial inclusion and to promote the participation of any funding institution in this process. The IMF does have a role to play, and we wanted to make sure that further marginalization of certain individuals is stopped. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sarah Hussain from AFP. I'd like to ask about the Belt and Road Initiative. Can you hear me okay? And how you see Belt and Road Initiative funding working alongside IMF projects in the region under your remit. Do you see it as competitor, complementary? How does that work?
Well, as you know, several countries of, especially in Central Asia and Caucasus, have benefited from the Belt and Road initiatives in order to improve their infrastructure, as well as also to promote additional interregional trade. The region of Central Asia would benefit from any additional investment that will lead to greater integration, and will allow those countries to retrieve the level of growth that this region has witnessed in the last decade. Of course, any massive capital spending or substantial capital spending needs to be done in a careful manner in order to maintain the macroeconomic stability, make sure that the procurement process is transparent, and also allow those countries to build enough track record in terms of debt repayment that will help them, on one hand, benefit from the positive impact of the infrastructure investment, and on the other hand, maintain their macroeconomic stability and their debt sustainability.
There are no more questions.
There's one
We have
question.
one more question. Please go ahead. In the back.
Hi, David Biller from Bloomberg. Just going back to Lebanon, I wanted to know how unsustainable do you see their debt burden, and is there a real risk of default there?
Well, as in the last staff mission and staff visit to Lebanon, we have highlighted the importance of taking decisive actions through fiscal adjustment in order to reduce the level of debt vulnerabilities, as well as also to address some of the structural issues that key sectors like the electricity sector are impacting the macroeconomic stability in Lebanon. Definitely, the government in its program has proposed an adjustment of 5% of GDP. We believe that this adjustment is welcome and should be as maximum as possible front-loaded.
One more question. Please go ahead. Question here.
Thank you again. I wanted to ask about reconstruction in Syria, whether there's a role for the fund, where you see that going, when it may happen.
Well, as you know, the role of the fund in helping countries which are going through wars or conflicts in stabilizing their macroeconomic situation, helping them in their managing their institution, as well as also helping countries in their reconstruction, especially in the region, is very active. In several countries, we have, in addition to our policy discussions with authorities, technical assistance, for example, in the case of Libya and Yemen. In the case of Syria, the situation is already not clear in terms of to which extent we are going to move from stabilization to reconstruction. The authorities didn't reach out yet to us or other international organizations on that aspect. And our role currently is observing the situation and trying to help countries, neighboring countries who are affected by the issue of refugees to deal with that, namely Lebanon and Jordan. And internally, we are doing, the necessary work to see what it needs to be done in terms of stabilization at the macro level, as well as also recovery and reconstruction, not only in the case of Syria, but also in other cases like Iraq, Yemen, Libya, and also Somalia. For example, in a country like Somalia, we have an active engagement with the program as well as also with technical assistance.
Are there any further questions? Okay, so yes, please.
Just clarifying the Financial Times question earlier before, it seems like what you're saying is Madame Lagarde will be going to Saudi Arabia, or has not yet decided whether she's going to cancel the trip. Could you explain what her plans are?
Frankly speaking, in the last few weeks, we were very much busy with the organization of the annual meetings, and then we were, each of us, busy meeting the various delegations. Therefore, we didn't discuss this issue. As I said, the trip to the region has been planned a long time ago and has several steps: the GCC ministerial meeting, the launch of the regional economic outlook, as well as also the participation at the PIF conference. We did not have the opportunity in the last few days other than follow up the developments, and we are sorry for what is taking place.
Anything else? Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for attending the press conference for the Regional Economic Outlook for the Middle East and Central Asia. Thank you, Jihad.
Thank you, Wafa.